exploring the Abbey Church, the ruins of the Royal Palace, Pittencrieff Glen and St Margaret's Cave. We begin here at Dunfermline Abbey, once the heart of a powerful medieval monastery and the principal burial place of Scotland's royal dynasty. Kings and queens were laid to rest here. Pilgrims travelled to the shrine of a saint, and the abbey survived warfare, religious upheaval, and structural collapse. Beneath the surviving medieval nave are the foundations of an even earlier church, established by Malcolm III and Queen Margaret almost 1,000 years ago. Fire also runs through Dunfermline's history. In 1303, Edward I of England occupied the abbey during his campaign in Scotland. When his army left, the monastery was sacked and parts of the complex were set alight, with the domestic buildings suffering most of the damage. The palace and abbey may have been burned again during Richard II's invasion in 1385, although the evidence is less certain. Then, on the 25th of May, 1624, Dunfermline itself was devastated by a great fire. According to a later account, a burning piece of the slow match used to fire a gun landed on the thatched roof of a house. Strong winds drove the flames across the town, destroying around 9/10 of the borough in only 4 hours. The Abbey Church survived, but much of the town surrounding it did not. Inside, the scale of the medieval abbey becomes much clearer. The nave is divided by enormous stone pillars supporting rounded Romanesque arches. Some are plain, while others are carved with deep zigzags. This is the oldest surviving part of Dunfermline Abbey, built mainly during the 12th century under David I. Beneath the floor are fragments of an earlier church. The church established by Malcolm III and Queen Margaret in the 11th century. Margaret was buried here in 1093. Malcolm's remains were later brought to Dunfermline, and their sons Edgar and Alexander I were also laid to rest here, although the exact locations of their graves are no longer known. After Margaret was declared a saint, her remains were moved to a magnificent shrine at the eastern end of the abbey. Lights were kept burning continuously before it for centuries, while pilgrims travelled to Dunfermline to honour her. Looking above, traces of the abbey's painted past still survive. On the ceiling are 16th century images of St. Peter, St. Paul, and the diagonal cross of St. Andrew. They were painted as frescoes, with pigment applied directly onto fresh plaster. Only fragments remain, but the ceiling was likely covered with saints and biblical imagery. Much of that decoration was later removed or destroyed. These faint figures are survivors from the painted church that once existed here. This monument belongs to William Schaw, Master of Works to James VI and Warden General of Scotland's Masons. In 1598, he issued the Schaw Statutes, organising lodges, apprenticeships, records and standards of workmanship. For that reason, he is often described as one of the founding figures of Scottish Freemasonry. At the centre of the monument, his name is written normally and then transformed into an intricate monogram. The latter inscription says that he travelled through France and other kingdoms for the improvement of his mind, possessed the liberal arts, and was most skillful in architecture. A shorter tribute adds, "Live with the gods, worthy man, live forever." We now leave the medieval nave and enter the eastern part of the church. Its foundation stone was laid in 1818 and it opened for worship in 1821. The most famous person buried here is Robert the Bruce, whose path to the throne began with an act of violence inside another Scottish church. In February 1306, Bruce met his political rival John Comyn inside the Greyfriars Church at Dumfries. Comyn was stabbed and killed close to the altar. Some accounts say Bruce struck the first blow and that his supporters completed the killing, although the exact course of events remains disputed. Whatever happened, the killing of a political rival inside a consecrated church was regarded as an act of sacrilege. Bruce was excommunicated, yet only weeks later he was crowned King of Scots. His position was far from secure. He faced English armies, opposition from rival Scottish nobles, and years in which his cause came close to collapse. Bruce defeated the English army of Edward II at Bannockburn. Later legends claimed that fugitive Knights Templar fought alongside Bruce and helped secure the victory. The victory established Bruce as the dominant power in Scotland, but England still refused formally to recognise either his crown or Scotland's independence. The struggle therefore continued through diplomacy as well as warfare. In 1320, a group of letters was sent from Scotland to Pope John XXII. One was issued in the name of Scotland's barons and the community of the realm. Another came from Robert the Bruce himself, and a third was associated with Bishop William Lamberton. Only the Baron's letter survives today. That surviving letter is now known as the Declaration of Arbroath. The declaration defends Bruce's kingship and asked the Pope to recognise Scotland as an independent kingdom. It also described both Bruce and Scotland in openly biblical language. It declared that God had delivered Scotland through our most tireless prince, king and lord, the Lord Robert. Bruce was then compared to two of the great deliverers of Israel, like another Maccabeus or Joshua. Joshua had led the Israelites into the promised land, while Judas Maccabeus had fought to free his people from foreign rule. The declaration went even further, describing Bruce as the man by whom salvation has been wrought unto our people. Bruce is being presented as a ruler used by God to deliver his nation, a warrior and liberator placed within the pattern of biblical history. The declaration also gave Scotland itself a place within that history. It claimed that the Scots had travelled from Greater Scythia, passed through Spain and reached their western homeland 1,200 years after the people of Israel crossed the Red Sea. The crossing of the Red Sea is being used as a point in the chronology, placing Scotland's national origin story within the biblical history of the world. Later writers went further and argued that the Scots and other British peoples descended from the lost tribes of Israel. Those claims remain disputed, but the biblical language in the declaration itself is unmistakable. Its most famous words were directed against English rule, but they also contained a warning to Bruce himself. The nobles declared, "As long as but 100 of us remain alive, never will we on any conditions be brought under English rule." They continued, "It is in truth not for glory, nor riches, nor honours that we are fighting, but for freedom, for that alone which no honest man gives up, but with life itself." The declaration supported Bruce because he had fought for that freedom, but it also stated that if he ever surrendered Scotland to England, the nobles would remove him and choose another king. His kingship was therefore presented as sacred, but not unconditional. He ruled because he had delivered and continued to defend the kingdom. In 1328, England finally recognised Scotland's independence and Bruce's kingship. He died the following year at Cardross. After his death, Bruce's heart was removed from his body. According to the account later recorded by Froissart, Bruce regretted that he had never travelled overseas to fight in the Holy Land, so he asked one of his closest companions, Sir James Douglas, to carry his heart there in his place. The heart was placed inside a silver casket. Douglas travelled south but never reached Jerusalem. He joined a Christian campaign against the Muslim kingdom of Granada in Spain and was killed in battle in 1330. Bruce's heart was recovered, returned to Scotland, and traditionally buried at Melrose Abbey. His body, however, was brought here to Dunfermline and buried near the medieval high altar. The chronicler Andrew Winton wrote, "In the kirk of Dunfermline his body was interred. Over the centuries, the medieval choir fell into ruin and the exact position of Bruce's grave was lost. Then in 1818, while the ground was being cleared for the construction of this new church, workmen uncovered a stone vault. Inside was a lead-covered oak coffin containing the skeleton of a tall man, wrapped in cloth woven with gold. When the grave was officially reopened in 1819, the breastbone was found to have been sawn through, consistent with the removal of the heart after death. The skull was also examined and a cast was taken before the remains were returned to the grave. The position beside the medieval high altar, the richness of the burial, the cloth of gold and the open chest all strongly supported the identification of the body as Robert the Bruce. His remains were placed in a new lead coffin and reburied beneath the church, where the large memorial brass now marks the place he is believed to lie. And above, his name is carved around the eastern tower in letters roughly 4 feet high, King Robert the Bruce. Let's have a look at the art exhibition from the Abbey Church Group. These are the remains of Dunfermline Palace. It began as part of the Abbey's medieval guest range, before successive Scottish kings enlarged it into a major royal residence overlooking Pittencrieff Glen. It is now closed to visitors, but one of the palace's strangest features is the Annunciation Stone, showing the angel Gabriel appearing to the Virgin Mary. For many years, marks beneath the carving were interpreted as the date 1100, which would have placed it around 4 centuries earlier than its accepted date. In 1859, after the stone was cleaned, the inscription was reported to read, Confido, Latin for I trust, beneath the arms of Abbot George Jury. That is now the accepted reading, although the fact that it only became clear after 19th century cleaning leaves some room for caution about exactly what earlier observers had seen. Beneath the palace kitchen lies a large vaulted chamber, locally known as the magazine, because it was used to store ammunition during the civil wars. Its chapel-like appearance suggests that it originally formed part of the medieval monastery. From its northeast corner, a dark underground passage runs for almost 90 feet beneath the complex before ending at a blocked wall. It was originally more than 6 feet high from its paved floor and was arched with stone ribs at intervals. Its original purpose remains uncertain. It may once have connected parts of the monastery and church, or served as a concealed route beneath the palace. This map here shows the Fife Pilgrim Way towards St Andrews, where the cathedral was believed to hold the bones and relics of St Andrew, one of Christ's apostles. That made St Andrews one of medieval Europe's major sacred destinations, described as Scotland's answer to Jerusalem. The route brought travellers through places like Dunfermline in search of healing, forgiveness and salvation. This is Abbot House. Over the entrance survives a warning. A spoken word is a slave, but thought is free. Guard your tongue well. In other words, thoughts remain private, but once words are spoken, they can no longer be taken back. Abbot House is regarded as the oldest surviving secular building in Dunfermline, with parts dating to the 15th century. It also survived the Great Fire of 1624, which destroyed much of the town. The house may stand over something even older. Excavations beneath the floor uncovered hearths, a clay bowl-shaped furnace, and traces of metalworking, suggesting that workshops occupied the site before the present building took shape. Today, Abbot House has been restored and is used as a heritage centre and coffee shop. From here, we'll take a short walk through the town towards St Margaret's Cave. We have now reached St Margaret's Cave. Although the entrance today is hidden beneath a car park, a modern staircase and tunnel lead down to the original chamber, cut into the sandstone beside the old burn. The cave is traditionally associated with Queen Margaret, wife of Malcolm III. She is said to have withdrawn here alone for prayer, fasting and contemplation, away from the activity of the royal court. According to the story, Malcolm became suspicious of her secret visits and followed her to the cave. Instead of discovering any wrongdoing, he found Margaret kneeling in prayer. Moved by what he saw, he ordered the cave to be fitted out as a private oratory for her. The chamber is small, less than 12 feet deep, and originally faced west towards the glen. When it was cleared in 1877, stone benches were discovered along both sides, as well as a small sunken well near the back. Local tradition later claimed that water from this well possessed healing powers. Margaret's devotion was also connected with a remarkable story involving her personal gospel book. Her biographer, Turgot, recorded that the book was accidentally dropped into a river and remained beneath the water before it was recovered. Despite this, its painted pages and lettering were said to have survived almost completely undamaged, apart from a few marks left by the water. Margaret and those around her regarded its survival as a miracle. Whether every detail of the cave tradition can be proven or not, this small chamber became one of Dunfermline's most enduring links with Scotland's saintly queen. We're now having a wee wander through Pittencrieff Glen. We had a little nosy around this abandoned section first, as it looked quite intriguing. Here we can see where the tower burn reappears after flowing beneath the city. We also noticed this small cave, apparently known as Wallace's Cave. There is no evidence that William Wallace actually stayed here, although tradition claims that he did in the almost impenetrable forest of Pittencrieff, while avoiding English forces. Above the burn is the traditional site of Malcolm Canmore's Tower. Malcolm III is said to have established a royal residence on this naturally defended hill, where he married Margaret and raised the family that produced several future kings and queens. Very little of this tower survives today, and the remaining stonework may actually belong to a later building. The tower became an important symbol of Dunfermline and appears on the town's old seal. The route across the glen then takes us towards the old Tower Bridge. An old poem claims that a group of witches caught the devil near this bridge, tied a rope around his neck and threw him over the side to hang. When they returned the next morning, the devil had vanished, leaving the rope hanging over the arch with a large piece of peat in his place. The poem calls him Old Blatty, apparently a local name for the devil. Nearby is Wallace's Well. It was originally known as the Schaw Well and was remembered for having extremely cold water. In 1773, the town council even protested when public access to it was closed. The name later changed from the Well of Spa to Wallace Spa, creating another local connection with William Wallace. the centre of the park stands Pittencrieff House. The present mansion dates mainly from the 17th century, although an earlier residence may have occupied the same site. Andrew Carnegie bought the Pittencrieff estate in 1903 and gave it to the people of Dunfermline, turning what had been private grounds into a public park. And like the inscription above the door says, "Praised be God for all his gifts," after exploring Dunfermline's Abbey, Palace, caves and glen, that feels like a fitting note to end on. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.